Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek Zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Allison Dale, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third week of the astrological year. It is Monday, April 1st, and this is your forecast for the week ahead. The weekly overview, we're in the medicine wheel direction east, in the element of wood in the Wuxing cycle of Taoist thought, in the pagan season of Ostara, in the Zodiac sign of Aries. The moon phase is waning from the lunar eclipse that we had last week and the full moon to the new moon solar eclipse they were going to have next Monday. And we are in the Ching Hexagram and Human Design Gate 21 for the first part of this week, from March 30th until April 4th. And then that's transiting into Gate 51 from Thursday, April 5th until April 10th. Gate 21 is known as Fire over Thunder, or Shihou, in the I Ching, and it's also known as Biting Through, or the Gate of the Hunter and the Huntress. Then we move into Gate 51, which is Thunder over Thunder, known as Zhen, a powerful jolt, or the Gate of Shock. So that is your weekly overview. Again, check the show notes for the image that aligns with that, where all of these different systems of the cycle of the year are overlaid and integrated into one another. If you want a visual aid, it's available for you. So yeah, we are here deep in the middle of Aries season with the moon waning from that full lunar eclipse we had last week in Libra toward the new moon total solar eclipse that we're going to have next week on Monday, April 8th. A lot of people are anticipating that one. It's going to be a big deal, especially here in the U.S., with it crossing 15 U.S. states and having about 4 minutes of totality in some areas, so it's going to be pretty spectacular. We're in this time between eclipses, which is known in some circles as an eclipse portal or an eclipse season. And during this time right now, we're feeling the dynamic push and pull between people and things from our past that we need to release and things that we're feeling hungry for in the future. This in-between time is a liminal space, and it can feel pretty exhausting. A lot might have been catalyzed in the lunar eclipse last week and released, but we're still kind of waiting for what new energies we want to arrive, and these new energies haven't yet taken root. So in each year, there's a couple of eclipse seasons or eclipse portals. And so during these times, it's definitely pretty common to feel tired or to feel a little bit out of sorts, kind of like you don't know where to root down, don't know where to plant yourself. I'm still a little bit sick, as you can maybe hear in my voice, but getting better and definitely giving myself a lot of space to rest, while also feeling kind of the external pressure to keep going with my projects and start new things. And so it's this kind of push and pull during eclipse season that feels a little bit tiring sometimes. So if you're in that boat, I definitely recommend giving yourself some grace and giving yourself just some permission to rest as much as possible. Since the spring equinox on March 19th, when I began this project, the sun has transited through the first half of the zodiac sign of Aries, which has included several energetic shifts between the gates of the I Ching. So we began in the gate of innocence with the spring equinox. And that was a week that was kind of filled with a universal love and abundance and an openness to all possibilities. And then the next week, last week, the sun transited into the gate of opinions, where we started forming ideas about the world around us through our experiences, but still remained open-minded, childlike, and curious. And then starting on this last Saturday, the sun transited into gate 21, which is the gate of the hunter and the huntress. And then on Thursday of this week, it's going to move into gate 51, which is known as the gate of shock, where it'll stay through the solar eclipse next Monday before moving into the gate of growth. And so that kind of is all of the different gates of human design or hexagrams of the I Ching that are included in Aries season. And it's really interesting to look at this kind of arc of these gates throughout the season of the Ram to me, because of how they feed into one another and they lead into one another by looking at it chronologically this way. So we'll be talking about both the gate of the hunter and huntress this week and the gate of shock, because they're both relating to the wheel of the year and the evolution of this Aries archetype. And we'll get into a little bit of what you can expect from the upcoming solar eclipse. Since it's such a big deal, I definitely want to hit on that this week before we dive into it next week as well. For those of you just turning into the show, just a little recap. I won't go into too much background about how I'm thinking about these things. You can definitely listen to the intro episode for that. But just since I'm talking so much about these gates and these hexagrams, I wanted to just reiterate that how I like to think about them. I kind of like to think about the gates of human design and the hexagrams of the I Ching, which are kind of synonymous with one another. I like to think about them as small slices of pie. So if you think of the Zodiac wheel, slicing the wheel of the year into 12 pieces or 12 signs, giving us mythological and archetypical information about a month-long period of time. The human design system, which draws from the ancient Chinese Book of Changes, or I Ching, slices the wheel up into 64 pieces, which are called hexagrams or gates. And these give us a mythological and archetypical information for about a 5 to 6 day period of time, because the year 360 degree wheel of the year, 365 days, divided into 64 parts is about almost between 5 and 6 days. And so as we look through the archetypes that the sun is transiting through each week, from the seasonal qualities of the Zodiac and the seasonal qualities of the medicine wheel and the Wuxing cycle as well, to the more specific qualities that are derived from the wisdom of the ancient I Ching, it kind of gives us an insight into the nature of this moment in time in a very multi-dimensional, multicultural way. So here we are in early spring still. It's the season of water transitioning into wood in the climax of the season of the Ram. And we're also here in gate 21, the hunter and the huntress. And in the I Ching, this hexagram is known as biting through. And in human design, quantum human design, it's also known as the gate of the resource manager, in addition to the hunter and the huntress. So kind of all of those titles and terms can combine into a contemplation on what this week, or what this time period is all about. People born with the sun, the moon, or planets in gate 21 typically have a deep desire for independence, for self-reliance, for financial freedom, and they usually blossom when they're given control. Most of the time, people with energies in this gate don't like to feel control from others or from society at large. They're usually self-made people and love to be their own bosses and work independently. If it is your birthday this week, between March 30th and April 5th, happy birthday. And that means that you were born in the gate of the hunter and huntress. let me know if this resonates. I'd be more than happy to hear from people listening if they happen to have planets in this gate, or if they're born with the sun in this gate this week, if any of this resonates. I know a couple of people that I'll talk about later that were born with this gate, and it definitely strikes me as very true. Definitely, like, they're types of people who like to go out and get what they need and then kind of manage the fruits of the hunt. And usually there's a big generosity here too, a desire to share the bounty of the hunt with others, as long as there's a certain control over it and it's not other people coming and taking what they've achieved. The I Ching describes this gate or this hexagram as biting through, which kind of indicates that there's always a problem to be tackled. And usually you, the person in question, is the one who needs to get their teeth into it, not waiting for somebody else to tackle the problem, but you want to get your hands dirty and get involved. The problem that I'm talking about could be a physical one, like in the most basic, it could be hunger, which makes a hunter go out to find food to eat. Or it could be a metaphysical problem, like the desire to find the truth, which makes the hunter gnaw through the illusions of separation. It's kind of like there's something between your jaw, like between your teeth and your bite, and all you want to do is bite through that in order to achieve a feeling of completion and a feeling of unity. So, if you're chewing or gnawing on something, it indicates success, like getting success through discernment and through hard work and leaving no stone unturned in a quest. The I Ching hexagram, like all hexagrams, is a combination of 2 trigrams. And these 2 trigrams are Shi and Ho, which is fire over thunder. In ancient China, this Shi Ho was a legal hexagram, and it in a lot of analyses of the I Ching, it indicated justice being served by having strict laws that discern between right and wrong. If you think of biting as kind of discerning and comprehending, in ancient China, where the I Ching originated, there was a deep belief that in order to form a harmonious society, the enforcement of justice was necessary. And the hunter and huntress shows up here in the belief that no crime against society or against an individual should be allowed to go unpunished. But it's also the belief that everybody should know what the law is and know what the discernment is, so that it is truly justice being served and not coming from a certain individual's perspective. I also like to think of this gate that we're in as like a thorny bush, thinking about like Sleeping Beauty or something like that, like a thorny vine, rose bush kind of going around a castle. You really want to get into that castle, but it just keeps growing and it's more and more thorny and more intertwined, and you can't really untangle that vine, but instead you have to cut through it or bite through it in order to proceed along your path and reach your goal, reach your desires. And so this gate, this time of the year, is very proactive. And this week's energy definitely involves taking action based on the opinions you formed through your open-minded and curious experiences last week. Like I said, I like to think personally about people who are born with the sun in the gate that we're talking about and where the sun is transiting through. And last week in the Gate of Opinions, I gave a little bit of an homage and a shout out to my mom. Read a poem that she had written down, or a excerpt from a book about curiosity and open-mindedness in the formation of opinions that just felt really poignant. And then this week is my dad's birthday, actually. So hi, Dad, if you're listening, happy birthday. I always knew that both of my parents were Aries, and they're definitely both highly energetic and adventurous. I've traveled a lot and, definitely just scream Aries in a lot of ways, but they're also very different. And so it's really interesting to learn that they're influenced by the energies of these different specific gates within the larger archetype of Aries. And it really opened my eyes to these differences and similarities. I just saw a video of an astrologer on Instagram through Deborah Silverman's account, talking about the differences between March Aries and April Aries. And it felt quite true as well, kind of aligned with the difference between the gate of opinions and the gate of the hunter, for example. So March Aries includes the gates of innocence and opinions in the I Ching and human design. And March Aries tend to be more open-minded and kind of connected to the sign that comes before, the sign of Pisces, as they're just emerging out of Pisces season. And Pisces represents the infinite, the underground, the spiritual, the intuitive, the connected to everythingness. And so Pisces, or Aries born in the earlier degrees of the sign of the Ram, have a bit more of that energy that's kind of emerging out of the soil of Pisces into the sprout of Aries. And then once you get midway through and towards the end of Aries season in April, there's a bit more of a self-determination. It's not that you've forgotten what happened underground during the time of incubation in the soil, but you're now very involved and aware of the world around you, and spring is kind of hitting you in the face, and so the April Aries includes the human design gates of the hunter and huntress, shock, and growth. And so April Aries are more about springing forward to differentiate and create their own realities. And this really strikes me as kind of a big difference between my mom and dad. They both have that energy and that kind of optimism and enthusiasm of the sign of the Ram, but have a bit more, a difference when it comes to how much they're picking up from others and from the collective versus how much they're on their own path forward. My dad, to me, really embodies the gate of the hunter and huntress. When he was 5 years old, a friend of his dad's showed him a buffalo nickel, which is also known as an Indian head nickel. These are these nickels that were designed and started to be distributed around 1913. This was in 1955 when he saw this nickel for the first time, and his dad's friend told him that because it was so rare and it had collectability, people were collecting them, that the nickel wasn't worth 5 cents alone. It was actually worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. And this really made my dad, as a little boy, get really excited about that possibility. And so he started hunting for rare coins as a young kid and became one of the youngest coin dealers and showing different coins at shows across the U.S., wearing a little tuxedo. I've heard this story many times. And just think it's really cute and really aligned with this, the sun being in the gate of the hunter when he was born. He's definitely a born entrepreneur. He's never worked for anyone else in his life and has definitely passed that along to me as like the best way to be. Eventually, coins turned into other rare antiques and art, and he made a business that has sustained his whole life, basically traveling to antique stores as well as people's basements and attics across the U.S. and Europe, kind of looking for elusive objects and things that are rare and interesting and might have value. And yeah, that word elusive object screams hunter, huntress, and it was definitely a part of my childhood. We would go on road trips a lot. For spring break or summer break, and just stop at every single possible antique store along the way. And when you're driving through like Texas or Idaho, there's a lot of antique stores. At least back in the 90s, there used to be maybe more, but it was always going in and, seeing a lot of tchotchkes and a lot of things that were, kind of common, but then looking in the back room for something that was, completely rare and could be very valuable. So at that point, I didn't really appreciate it so much. But over time, I really began to appreciate seeing these artifacts of human creation and looking for things that were unique and interesting. So I definitely value that now. As a lifelong nature lover, my dad also kind of in his later years began bird watching, and he loves nothing more than to spot a rare or uncommon bird with his binoculars. He will go far and wide, drive, many hours and miles to get to a bird that's been reported, that's been sighted, that is rare. And I know that's pretty common amongst bird watchers, and my dad's definitely in that kind of hunting, luckily not with a gun, but with a camera. So yeah, if that doesn't scream literal hunter and huntress energy, I don't know what would. So yeah, it's been very clear in my life what this energy is all about. When I compare it to the realm of the Zodiac, I think of the first week of Aries season back in the Gate of the Innocent as kind of a cute newborn lamb that's just so pure and so innocent. It's like the symbol of innocence, truly. And then last week in week 2, the lamb is finding his voice and beginning to bleat and baa and express what he is discovering out in the world from all of the different inputs around him. And then in this third week here, I like to think of it as like the ram's horns are growing in, and the adolescent rams are beginning to play with each other by budding their horns and realizing kind of where they stop and another begins, and just having kind of a playful interplay with getting involved with what else is out there, and using their horns to lead the charge into the world. I love those videos of like little baby goats and rams butting heads when they're small. They're very, very cute. Highly recommend Googling that if you haven't watched one recently. But similarly, in the Taoist 5-element cycle of the Wuxing, this time of year is the transition from the water element of winter into the wood element of spring. And so similar to the evolution of the ram, I also kind of see the early days of a tree coming out of, the nourishing wet soil, watery soil underground in Pisces season and in winter, sprouting up the wood of a tree into an innocent sapling. And at first it's absorbing all the influences of the world around it from its fresh new leaves and just the little shoots that are coming up. And then over time, the sapling is going to grow thicker bark, thicker skin, as it has more of a differentiation and discernment between itself and the world around it. So in all of these systems, I'm really seeing a parallel and a similarity between just a few weeks of the beginning of spring and how much happens within those few weeks, from being born to being, a young child, a young toddler. There's so much that happens in that time. It's just like, how do we start, like, it's not a blank slate because it's pulling from energy from, the past lives and the years before and the time that we spent in the womb and the time underground. But it is fresh when you're entering the world anew. And then quite quickly, we have to start making opinions and start, butting our heads into different areas to see what happens, right? So, the hexagram biting through, they really come at this time of year when we're just distinguishing where we end and where another begins, what we believe to be right and wrong, and what we really desire to go after in this life. The sun is transiting through this gate until Thursday of this week, so I invite you to spend some time this week, in the beginning of the week, contemplating these ideas and really thinking about what you're willing to work hard for, to seek out in your life. There might be a lot of exhaustion, like I said before. That's the case with me, and I've heard it from a lot of other people in this eclipse portal. But there might be a kind of exhaustion paired with an excess of built-up energy as your baby ram horns are kind of coming through. So I recommend, getting into your body, and if you can, getting some exercise, taking a walk, getting outside, so that you can rest a bit better at night and really get the rejuvenation that you need during this time of so much change. On Thursday, like I mentioned, the sun is transiting into gate 51, which is called the gate of shock. So we're moving from the gate of the hunter and huntress into the gate of shock. And the sun will be in this gate until next Wednesday, right after the solar eclipse. So I'll speak about it a little bit now and also a little bit next week, next Monday, since the next episode is coming out right on the day of the solar eclipse. The hexagram of Gate 51 is represented by 2 thunder trigrams, whereas Gate 21 was represented by fire over thunder. This is thunder over thunder. And it symbolizes arousal and initiation and also shock. In Gate 51, the energy of those budding ram horns and sprouting trees is met with the shock of when we insert ourselves into the world is kind of fights back. It's kind of like the saying, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I think to us little teenage rams here in Aries season, the actions and the reactions to our actions from the larger world can come as quite of a shock at this point in time. If we kind of think of this period of time in spring as like fresh and new, it can also feel truly shocking to see the power of our own impact on others and the power of our own impact on the larger world. Sometimes we don't realize how much we can influence our surroundings or influence people in our lives. So I like to think about the adolescent rams with their baby horns playing with each other, having fun, jumping around, and then as their horns start to grow bigger and they get stronger in their bodies, they actually get hurt by a headbutt or they hurt someone else. And this can be really shocking when you're kind of just used to playing around with that energy and then suddenly it's like, bam, I just ran into something or something ran into me and it hurt. And it just was a big surprise, right? I think shock can be a scary realization, but it also has the power to transform us, I believe, through kind of cracking our hearts open to what is truly valuable to us on an individual level and on a social and collective level as well. I think that every time the world truly shocks us, we have the potential to discover a deeper truth about ourselves and consider why the event that happened was so shocking to begin with. What shocks you might not shock me and vice versa, but you can't deny the fact that something does feel shocking in your body. If your birthday is this week or next, that means that the sun was transiting through the gate of shock when you were born. So you're in Aries, and you're also born during the gate of shock. That would be Thursday again through next Wednesday. So you may, if you were born with this gate, with your sun in this gate, it's a lot of energy in that gate. So you may have encountered shocking experiences along your life path, or you might find that you tend to shock others with your risk-taking aptitude. For everyone, as we transit through this, as the sun transits through this gate this week, and as we go about our life during the end of the week and the weekend and into early next week, we may feel more desire to take risks and also may feel a certain shock or arousal from things that are happening in our worlds. And so this week, it's important to kind of take note of these things, maybe write something down. Maybe you don't have to because it's so shocking. But really try to look at the moments of shock or the moments where you're being aroused by something as initiations into a kind of deeper and more aligned version of yourself and your personal truths. Shock doesn't have to be scary. There can be a lot of benefit from it. Like I mentioned before, next Monday we have a solar eclipse in Aries in the gate of shock. And to me, when I found that out, I think this fact in itself is quite shocking. Eclipses occur every year at different times, depending on where the north and south nodes of the moon are that year. So eclipses wouldn't always happen in the gate of shock. And the fact that this eclipse is happening and to fall in the gate of shock is pretty incredible and aligned, because eclipses in folklore around the world are kind of known as shocking events. I mean, the world goes dark in the middle of the day. That's definitely kind of one of the most shocking things any human could experience. Or the moon goes completely dark or turns red, So around the world in ancient times as well as in modern times, eclipses are known to be shocking catalytic moments that are ushering in endings and new beginnings. And a lot of cultures around the world don't really view eclipses as something to be a spectacle or something to be witnessed, but more so a time to go inward, to go indoors. I've kind of taken this as my personal belief. I have watched eclipses before, and they're truly phenomenal. But in more recent times, I have chosen to take them as a time to really get into my insides and my emotions and my feelings, rather than going out and being around a bunch of people and watching with my glasses and kind of hooting and hollering. To each their own. There's no right way to do it. But traditionally, through a lot of cultures, it has definitely been a time to pay reverence to this alignment. I think it's truly, truly fascinating that the sun is 400 times larger than the moon and 400 times further away, so that it creates this exact perfect alignment. I love looking at pictures of the corona and the sun flares that are coming out from behind the moon in a solar eclipse. I trust the photographers to do that job more than I could see through my little glasses anyway. So I'm definitely planning on this next eclipse to be going inward and thinking about my deeper truths as far as kind of what are the things that have shocked me, what are the things that have surprised me lately and allowed me to see deeper into myself, I guess. So that's my tangent. But when the sun and the moon are meeting in Aries and in the gate of shock, they're also, just a little aside, they're conjoining the asteroid Chiron. So Chiron is an asteroid that was found in 1977 and is very large, almost as big as Pluto, so almost a planetoid. And so this celestial body, has influences on us here on Earth as well. Chiron is going to be in the gate of shock along with the sun and moon. And the archetype is the wounded healer. Chiron is kind of showing us how we can heal ourselves by confronting our deepest fears and secrets. So needless to say, this planetary configuration and eclipse could be quite shocking and revelatory at the same time. This eclipse is being popularly referred to as the Great American Eclipse because it's passing over western Mexico through Mazatlan and then through 15 United States and then into eastern Canada over Montreal. And yesterday I was feeling kind of sick, and so I stayed in bed, and instead of watching Netflix, I let myself indulge in way too many Instagram reels about the upcoming eclipse and discovered a lot of conspiracy theories floating around about the eclipse. It's pretty crazy, y'all. Like, you can just look at the hashtag on Instagram or go on Google and search for, April 8th solar eclipse, and there's a ton out there of people making meaning about this specific eclipse and how it ties into the last total solar eclipse in America in 2017. I just kind of went deep down the rabbit hole on that. And luckily, when I was doing that, we were transiting through the gate of opinions. So I was hearing all of these opinions and also keeping a curious, open mind about them. Just truly fascinated by the meaning-making, biblical and Freemasons and, otherwise all kinds of different information about how this eclipse lines up for the future. It was kind of everything from the government using the eclipse as a scapegoat for a cyber attack and deploying National Guard, and that's why that's happening, to the rapture and the second coming of Christ. And so as we approach next week, something you see or you read or you hear may indeed shock you. I was shocked already by some of the allegations and things that were coming out about this. I'm right now, by no means here to add any fear to anyone's heart. And I'm definitely saddened by a lot of the information out there that is so fear-mongering. It's a lot of kind of like, a desire for more money or more power. People will say things that are upcoming, that are out of our control to, get us to join something, get us to give money, get us to kind of be paralyzed in fear. And I definitely am very against that. And believe that the only thing to fear is fear itself, and that we really, truly doesn't benefit anybody to lean into fear about what might happen. But at the same time, even so, when I hear the word shock, or when I read the word shock, when I was doing research for this podcast, that word does something immediate to my body. It's like onomatopoeic. It kind of just like shocks you. It's like zing, just an electricity kind of travels through my body when I hear shock. And it's basically like, no, I don't want to be shocked. I don't like that feeling. Thank you very much. I will not have a shock today. Thank you. So, knowing that this is the week of the gate of shock and the eclipse is moving through that gate, I'd like to reiterate and reimagine this word of shock as the word arousal instead. So you can carry that with you if you feel shocked. It's like, what's the difference between shock and arousal? Think about how shocking it feels to jump into a cold pool or a lake or the ocean, Pacific Ocean, where I've jumped into many a time. This definitely isn't something people would choose to do for fun, but it's become more and more popular to jump into cold water and do cold plunges and hot cold therapy lately because it's been shown how healthy it is for our immune systems to shock them in this way. And hot cold therapy and that type of thing has been popular around the world, from Japan to Turkey, all over the place for millennia. And so it's definitely a time-tested technique to shock our immune systems for health reasons. And I've personally become a big fan of this type of therapy. My partner and I built a cedar tub in our yard last year, a couple years ago. And then we recently added a cold plunge that's like a horse trough we got from, the big farm store. And it's iced over in the winter, and I definitely did some hot tub into cold plunge action that some people are just like, never, I would never do that. And other people are like, oh yeah, I'm on the ice bucket challenge. I'm just on that tip. A lot of gyms, a gym that I'm about to join has a cold plunge and infrared sauna combo. So it's definitely very popular. And I've seen great benefits from it personally in my life, but it still doesn't ever feel easy to jump in the cold plunge and then back into the hot. There's a tingle, my skin and my heart and my blood flow, it's all being aroused. It's being shocked, right? And, over time I've heard that you grow more accustomed to the cold. You get kind of desensitized to that if you're doing it every day, for example. And you can also learn techniques like deep breathing patterns to kind of overcome that initial shock to the system. I did a breathwork retreat into Pagan Canyon in LA a couple years ago that did this. It was kind of my first time doing hot sauna and cold plunge collectively. There was a huge cold plunge that could fit 4 people with a lot of ice in it. And it was pretty fun to do that while doing a breathwork retreat and focusing on the breath and see how much that makes a difference in that initial shock, even though it doesn't go away. Your hands are freezing, like you get a little slip of water behind your knee that had been bent, and it's just like another re-shock to the system. So yeah, it doesn't go away, but it is an arousal, and it's good for you in this way, right? So if you feel a shock in the upcoming week from your interactions with the world, I definitely invite you to think about what it's like jumping into cold water, and know that shock, whatever it is, won't last forever. And also know that to get through anything that's shocking, it's important to move slowly and breathe deeply, and know that arousing experiences can be shortcuts to a better alignment with yourself and your truth. This is a confronting kind of energy this upcoming week, but it doesn't have to be scary. And definitely not to worry beyond those mindsets and breath exercises. Also know that a couple days after the eclipse next week, by next Wednesday, which is April 10th, the sun is going to move out of the gate of shock, 51, into gate 42, which is called the gate of growth. And this gate will help us grow out of what shocked us, as the growth comes out of the shock. And it also helps us kind of tap into this wisdom of cycles that I'm talking about every week here. Just it's all a cycle. One thing always bleeds into the next, and it's never a cut and dry situation. But with the wisdom of cycles in the gate of growth, we realize that nothing is permanent, and also that growth happens in bursts rather than in a continuous steady flow. Nothing really grows just this, if it stays the same day after day, no growth is going to happen. But oftentimes there's a big leap, and then there's a process of recovery, and then another great leap, and then a process of recovery. And that happens in plant life in the animal kingdom and kind of the evolution of the world, really. So that is what we have to look forward to, this feeling of growth and a recognition of the growth that we are all going through so acutely right now. So I hope all of you out there are taking care of yourself this week as if you were a baby ram or a beautiful young sapling. I encourage you to be slow when you need it, and also don't be afraid to show the world what you're made of. It is the gate of the hunter and huntress after all, and it's all a process of growth. So give yourself time, give yourself space, give yourself love. Thank you for listening to the Cycles of Time weekly forecast. I will see you next week for this solar eclipse in Aries. All my love. Bye.